Ag Bioscience, the #1 ag tech podcast globally, is now available on video. Hear from leaders and innovators across food, animal health, plant science, ag tech, and agriculture. Mondays at 6 a.m. on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, subscribe and leave us a review. It's the Ag Bioscience Podcast with Agronovis Indiana. Get more information at agronovisindiana.com.
It all started playing saxophone in the 5th grade, and then later on the road in a Volkswagen van. By the 90s, Chuck Surack's entrepreneurial spirit hit a high note in the music business.
Hi, I'm Chuck Surack, and welcome to Sweetwater Sound. I'd love for you to join me on a tour of our services and facilities, our website, videos.
Surack's incredible journey from a one-man band to creating the nation's largest online music retailer. Why Chuck Surack chose to keep his billion-dollar business firmly planted in Fort Wayne, the legacy he's building beyond business, and his next big thing, which could be a $250 million project in Northeast Indiana. He's my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. And I'm really pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Chuck Surack, the chairman and founder of Sweetwater Sound, now generally known as Sweetwater, an incredible company based in Fort Wayne. He's also the chairman and CEO of Surack Enterprises, an organization with a number of companies in a variety of industries doing great business in Northeast Indiana and far beyond as well. And Chuck, you're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
I'm happy to be here, Gary. Thank you.
I want to talk about your entrepreneurial journey, which is a great story. But first, what you're doing now. I mentioned Sweetwater Enterprises, and you sold your majority interest in Sweetwater, right, a couple of years ago. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
It's hard to believe how time has passed, but it's my baby. I started Sweetwater 47 years ago. And frankly, from a estate planning point of view and all that, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But I found some great partners to help run the company. And my wife and I still own a big piece of it. We just sold the majority, and that gave us the flexibility and the freedom to do lots of other things. And yet at the same time, Sweetwater is doing better than they've ever done.
Yeah, they're doing incredible things, expanding in Fort Wayne, a big driver for the economy in that part of the state and beyond it as well. What's your role now, you and your wife, in terms of your role at Sweetwater?
Well, I'm still chairman of the board. And again, we're the largest single investor outside of the capital firm that's involved. But the biggest thing is all the same employees are there when I was there. The person running it, Mike Clem, has been with the company now for 22, 23 years. So I'm just thrilled with how it's operating.
I want to talk about the journey that ended up in your creation of Sweetwater, because it's a fascinating story. But first, as I mentioned, Sweetwater Enterprises. Give us the thumbnail description, because you are in a bunch of different industries. Talk about all the companies, how many there are. I think there are a couple of dozen companies involved?
Yeah, it's a little hard for me to even keep track of them. But when I left Sweetwater, and we'd already started some of these companies while I was still at Sweetwater, but when I left Sweetwater, fortunately, we had a little bit of money, and we put a lot of that money into a foundation to help a lot of organizations. But then we also used it to further other businesses in Fort Wayne. And so Surack Enterprises was started, and we have about 25 businesses or so.
Yeah.
And they're in the aviation world, they're in the optical world, restaurant, customer service, a bunch of different things.
When you make a decision to invest in a company or start a company, what do you have some some milestones, some things you look at that interest you and make you want to do it?
I think my wife would say I shouldn't do it, but I'm just looking for companies that have good values and will add to the brand. I'm not necessarily looking for more companies, but if it's a company that maybe is distressed or there's a way that I could get in and help it get better, and a lot of them have been that. They were in a period where they weren't doing so well, and I realized that applying good customer service skills, applying marketing, and just maybe investing in the company could turn them around.
You really have a passion for Fort Wayne in Northeast Indiana, no question about that. And as you look at the investments you've made, the time you're putting into so many things, I look at things like the Clyde Theater, where we just had an event not long ago, our Innovate Indiana series there. And taking that historic place that I think was it vacant? Was it had been sitting vacant for a while?
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie theater from 1951 by a very famous local architect, 2,400 seats. And then in the 70s, when all the multiplex theaters came along, they put a wall down the middle and turned it into a couple of 1,200 seat theaters. And then it became a church for a short while, and then it went dark. And frankly, it was full of pigeons and rats. And a young fellow bought it at a tax sale for $500.
Wow.
And he came to me, and he wanted to turn it into a music facility. And so my wife and I got involved, and eventually we turned it into a beautiful facility that does a lot of great stuff now.
Yeah, does that investment in that property, does that kind of, in a sense, kind of crystallize kind of your thought process? Because it's something that gave back in a big way to Fort Wayne, to be sure. So is that the kind of maybe the kind of investment you really like to make?
Yeah, I love making investments that help make our community better and offer various resources to the folks in our community. It's not always the best financial decision, but I'm in a great position today that we can do things that just make sense for me.
All right, I want to talk about something that to me is a fascinating project you're working on, and that's a potential racetrack, a race course in Northeast Indiana. Tell me about that, where that is, because this is a substantial project that could have real impact not only in Northeast Indiana but beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved for about the last 10 or 11 years as doing a fundraiser for the Auburn Cord Museum up in Auburn. And we have gone to various tracks around the Midwest, and we have fun driving cars that, basically any speed you're comfortable driving. But it's really a fundraiser for the museum. But the problem was every one of those tracks were at least 3 hours away from Fort Wayne. And, the 50 to 100 of us that would go kept going, I wish we had a track in this area, in this region. To make a long story short, we hired some consultants from Europe, both a business design company and then also a track design company. And they said, you could not have picked a better place in our United States than Auburn, Indiana, for a couple reasons. Auburn is a car community or automobile community. But more importantly, we found this amazing piece of property, the old Cruise Auction Park on I-69 and County Road 11A, that has almost 300 acres of land. And it will allow us to build this incredible track that will have local people, but also people coming from all over the country if we build it correctly. It'll be a great tourist draw. It'll be great for the community of Auburn. And we're just really excited about it.
And you're talking about a venue that would host potentially some big time races, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it'll be used a lot for the weekend warriors, if you will, people who want to drive their sports car, but there'll be driver's education where you can learn to drive cars quickly. It'll be available to the police forces so they can practice defensive driving and that sort of thing. We envision students, there'll be a go-kart track so they can learn to drive go-karts, which quite often is a gateway to get into race cars and all that.
Yeah. As you look at Fort Wayne in Northeast Indiana, give me your take. You're right in the thick of things. Have your fingers on the pulse of the economy there. I started my career there many years ago, back in the early '80s. It has certainly changed in so many ways. Transformative downtown, a lot of things going on. What's your take on the Fort Wayne economy and some of the investments you've made there? Because there are multiple major high-profile investments in downtown Fort Wayne.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our region, not just Fort Wayne, but all of Northeast Indiana. We put our heads together many years ago and said that we need to invest in ourselves. And it really started almost 17, 18 years ago with a ballpark in downtown Fort Wayne. We built this ballpark that most of our community was against. They said, we have a ballpark out at the Coliseum. And myself and many other business leaders and a very progressive mayor at the time, Graham Richard, went in front of city council and said, no, we need the investment in downtown Fort Wayne. So we built that ballpark. It quickly became the #1 minor league ballpark in the country. But more importantly, it gave our consumers, our constituents in town, the confidence that we could do more. And so we quickly added a hotel over center field and then a crosswalk to our famous Embassy Theater. And then the Ash Building got built, and then the riverfront development. And of course, the project that we did at the Pearl a couple years ago. And all of that has given us confidence to grow our community. And I'm just so excited about the path that we're on. Used to be Indianapolis was the area that was growing, but now Fort Wayne's one of the hottest spots in the whole state.
No question about it. And being there just a couple of weeks ago, I always enjoy running and things downtown. It is truly amazing what is happening down there from a development standpoint. But as you look back on that, because I think that is really interesting in terms of getting the ballpark built, which was the catalyst for so much of this stuff. There was a lot of opposition to it, and it would have been very easy just to say, no, we're not going to do it. It's not going to happen. But you and others took the ball, figuratively speaking, and ran with it. How challenging was that?
Oh, it was very challenging. But I'll tell you, that's one of the things that I love about Fort Wayne. When you get interested people together, we're a small enough community we can get things done, but also big enough that we can make some big changes. And I think you have to remember that it's the leaders of Fort Wayne, whether they're business leaders or leaders in your home, can make a difference. It's not the politicians. The politicians are there for a relatively short term. It's our community as citizens. And that's how the ballpark got done. That's how many things have gotten done. When I look at the Electric Works project, that was
Mhm.
almost not going to happen. But we got a bunch of business leaders together and said, no, Mayor, we need this to get completed. And I think business leaders and just leaders in general can make a difference in our community, whether
Yeah,
you're a business leader, a civic leader, a church leader, someone at your home, you can make
yeah.
a difference.
A lot of investment in the riverfront there, as well as you look at forward-looking things. And another forward-looking initiative is really bolstering the music economy, the music ecosystem, if you will. Talk about that because I think just this week, I think we did a story on our website on this music strategy that's part of a bigger tourism strategy. Talk about music as an economic development driver in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been fortunate, and a lot of it was inspired by Sweetwater, but even before that, Fort Wayne's always been known as a music community. But we've brought nearly 3,000 employees to Fort Wayne, and most of them are musicians, or their spouses may be musicians or artists. And we've been trying to grow the music economy. And a few years ago, some of the organizations in town hired a company out of Europe again to look at the strategies in Fort Wayne. And my goal and their goal was to figure out, how do we move this forward? Let's get the music, whether it's a theater or whether it's nightclubs or what Sweetwater does, how can we work more together and promote more of the arts and more of the musicians? And so we started a music office. That's what really was announced. And then we also announced that we're going to find an executive director to run this music office. So every day they get up and think, how do we make music and the arts better in Fort Wayne? And I'm just really excited about that.
What do you think the impact can be? There's an economic impact, but there's also a quality of life impact, and everybody, every city, every region in the country is after talent. They want to keep talent and attract talent. Is there a talent attraction piece to having a music economy?
Absolutely. I have a 19-year-old daughter who just finished her first year at Butler University, and she keeps telling me that when she graduates, she's going to move to a big city. And I keep saying, no, you're going to move back to Fort Wayne. We can argue this back and forth. But what gets her excited is the kind of music things. The new Ruoff soccer
Yeah.
stadium that just opened announced that they're going to do music events. And she said, Dad, that could get me back to Fort Wayne. I love that. So I've told Mark Music, we got to get music in there as soon as possible.
Yeah. Well, and talk about that because that's another major development. The new soccer venue that is now open and very high profile. You see it as you drive up by 69. It's very impressive. What does that add to this mix you're talking about with music, with downtown development, with all the things going on in Fort Wayne? I mean, as I get around the state and I do a fair amount, I don't see any other place in the state where there's as much going on as we see going on in Fort Wayne.
There's a lot going on, and specifically on the soccer stadium, I give a lot of credit to Mark and Sarah Music. It's one of those things, I'm not sure we knew that we needed a soccer stadium, but they built a first-class stadium. I've been to a couple games already, and it's just another fun experience, a quality of place for our community, more things to do.
Yeah. As you look not far from I-69, the Sweetwater headquarters is phenomenal. Well, first of all, Chuck, give folks, I think many people know of Sweetwater, but they may not know what Sweetwater does and what you built there in terms of music equipment and the sales component and the size of the company. Give us that thumbnail description of Sweetwater. Then I want to talk about that cool headquarters
Thank
campus.
you. Yeah, I mean, basically, we sell music instruments to anybody in the country and now really all around the world. And we've grown from me starting in a Volkswagen bus 47 years ago to today. We have nearly 3,000 employees on our campus.
Wow.
We sell literally 30,000 orders every day of the week. We sell 1,000 guitars a day. 1,000, I don't even know where they go, but 1,000 guitars each and every day. And right now we've served about 12 or 13 million customers. And, but everything you would need to do music, and last year or so we've added home audio equipment. So now we can make your stereo systems at home and all that work. And it's just an amazing company. And I'm just very proud of it all.
That is an amazing story. And as you look at the campus, the Sweetwater campus, it's been described to me. I've been there. We've shot a fair amount of video there as well. It's, kind of a Google-like campus. I mean, it is really a cool facility. Give us the description. And a lot of folks may not know that exists right here in Indiana.
Yeah, I've never been to the Google campus, and I probably had the vision about the same time they were working on that. But the most fun stuff, of course, we have a slide that goes from our second floor to our first floor. And when I was putting that in, my architect said, "Oh, no, I don't know about a slide." And I said, "No, it's the music business. It should be fun." And then he said, "Well, you need to talk to your lawyer." I talked to my lawyer, and my lawyer says, "Yeah, well, everyone that comes down that slide, we're going to have them sign a release." I said, "No, we're not. I had a slide in kindergarten. It should be fun." But we have a cafeteria that serves thousands of people literally every day. It's open to the public, and it's really good quality food at a fair price. We have, of course, all of our instruments on display. So there's 50,000 square feet of music instruments. We have a lesson area. We teach over 1,300 students a week, and students can range from actually, we do a mom and babies class. And recently we had an individual that was 93 years old, and he wanted to learn some guitar love songs for his wife. So we do the whole age gamut. And it's open to the public, whether you're a musician or not. And a lot of people just come in to eat or just experience the activity that's in the space.
Yeah, and I think you've got the Volkswagen bus, right? That's on display there where it all started.
Yeah, that's a facsimile of my original bus, but it does have a lot of the history. And my original bus went to a junkyard over in Van Wert, Ohio. But this is similar. It's just a lot nicer than what I used to have.
Well, we're going to talk about that and how it all started because it is a great story. When the Business and Beyond podcast returns, stay with us.
As a bank, PNC prides itself on being boring. But the truth is they couldn't be more excited to serve the dynamic Indianapolis community. For nearly 160 years, they've quietly toiled away to deliver brilliant results for their equally brilliant clients. They have dedicated PNC teams throughout the local area all ready to do the boring work to help you unlock your own brilliance. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865. PNC Bank, National Association member FDIC.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America builds and maintains roads, bridges, and other essential infrastructure that make us the crossroads of America. So thanks to LIUNA members' work, Hoosiers have a better quality of life, like access to utilities, easier routes to jobs, schools, or medical care, and deliveries keep moving. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Chuck Surack. Chuck is the founder and the chairman of Sweetwater Sound, also currently the founder and CEO of Sweetwater Enterprises, which has a number of companies doing business in Northeast Indiana and beyond. And Chuck, I want to get to your great entrepreneurial venture story, if you will, and how you founded Sweetwater a number of years ago. But first, we talked in the first half of the podcast about this idea you have and the work you're doing on a potential racetrack in Northeast Indiana in Auburn. That is, that's a big project. Give us an idea or some reference as to the scope of this project and how substantial it is.
Yeah, it's a big project. There's about 300 acres of land. There'll be a road course of about 3.25 miles. And in fact, you can actually split the track in two. So you could have two different events going at one time. But we envision people to come with their Corvettes and their Porsches and Ferraris, but also in their daily drivers and learn how to drive defensively and not have to worry about speeding tickets and that sort of thing. The initial project is about $100 million. So it's a big project for the DeKalb County community. And as the project grows, as we build condominiums and a hotel and a bunch of other things, it'll be a $200 to $300 million total project.
That is big time. Now, as you look at the course, a road course, is this something that's being designed that could ultimately house Indy cars, have Indy car races there?
It could. In fact, we're designing it to what's called an FIA Level 2 course, which means it can deal with high-speed cars, and more importantly, it has the safety, the right runoffs and fences, and frankly, even a hospital ward and that sort of thing. And I'm doing this project with Tom Kelly and Bill Bean, some other great entrepreneurs in our community. And Tom's already starting to collect some Indy cars because he used to be an Indy 500 owner.
Right.
We definitely want to have the ability to run some cars at the 200 mile an hour speed range.
And this is something that can have big impact on Auburn, DeKalb County, throughout Northeast Indiana.
I think it's going to be great for the community. And, it's one thing, the initial investment we're going to make, but it'll allow other investments to come and support that side of the DeKalb County.
All right, Chuck, I want to talk about Sweetwater and how you got started. I know you've told this story many times, but it bears repeating because to me, it's one of the great entrepreneurial stories of all time, not just in Indiana, but anywhere. Take us back to that Volkswagen bus and how Sweetwater was founded.
Wow. Yes. I have told the story a couple times, but I was on the road as a musician. I play saxophone and keyboards, and the VW bus my parents had given to me as a junior in high school. My mom had wrecked it, and I filled it with 2 gallons of Bondo, and I spray painted the bus with 99-cent cans of blue spray paint that came from Kmart. Those of us who can remember a Kmart. But I took it on the road as a musician and played on the road for almost 5 years. And I came home and I had some recording equipment that I had earned, on the road. And I'm figuring out, what am I going to do? And I didn't have a lot of money, but I did have the VW bus and some equipment. And I decided to do a mobile recording studio. And I would pull the bus alongside a church, a school, a nightclub. I'd run 200 feet of microphone cables in. I'd mic up the band, the choir, the preacher. And then I'd sit in the bus with my headphones. And in those days, it was a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And I would record their service or their musical event. And then I would take those recordings very modestly to my 12 by 55 mobile home. And I would put all the songs in the right order, and then we'd send them away and get LPs or records made, and eventually cassettes and CDs. And then those groups would sell those CDs either to the parents or, on the road as they played and that sort of thing. And it went from a mobile recording studio to my first 1,000 little square foot house on the west side of Fort Wayne. And it just grew and grew from there. And it's been an amazing story. Today we have 1 million square feet under roof.
Wow.
I could have never envisioned that 47 years ago.
And doing that 47 years ago, obviously many years before digital was a reality. Talk about the work, stringing cable, all the work and the effort that went into that had to be pretty incredible.
Yeah, thankfully I was young and was in good shape at those times because you'd spend many, many hours setting up, and then you'd go through whatever the performance was, and then many, many hours of tearing it back down. And you're right, the equipment was heavy, it was analog and slow. It would be so much easier today to do it with electronic equipment, the digital equipment that's available. In fact, an interesting side note, just 2 weeks ago at Sweetwater, we announced a travel trailer where we filled it up with new modern digital equipment, a nod to the history of how the company started. And it's made all kinds of noise as it's traveled across the country, recording various musical events.
Wow, neat. When did you start to really kind of think that this might be getting some traction? This whole idea as you got into that 1,000 square foot home and things began to roll. When did it start to click?
Gary, it was so gradual. I don't know that I ever did figure that out. I turned around one day and I go, wow, this company's pretty big, when I had 10 employees and then 50 employees and then 250 employees. But, somewhere in the mid 2000s, I realized that it was now bigger than Chuck Surack and it was growing faster. We were growing double digits all the time. But probably 2003, 4, 5 in that area.
Yeah. What in your view has been key to the success? Phenomenal success. Those very gaudy numbers. What's been behind it? Why did this idea become such a success story?
That's a great question. And most people would say it's, music instruments, and I was at the right place at the right time. But honestly, when I started, there were 5,000 other music stores across the country.
Wow.
Somehow we grew to being the largest in the world at what we do. And that's 5,000 in the US. I don't know how many are around the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But we did it based on customer service. And I know those are easy words to say, but we just always did the right thing. And that's been my motto. I grew up as a Boy Scout, and a Boy Scout learns to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, clean, brave, and reverent. And those are great principles to live by personally, but they're also great principles to run your company by. And interestingly enough, in the music business, we only could sell to about 6% of the population. And that's one of the reasons I got involved in other businesses, because I knew that the same customer service principles could apply to virtually anything else. And it became more true today than it's ever been, as customer service is waning a little bit and we're used to
Yeah.
doing stuff online. When you do go into a business and see great customer service, it's demonstrable. People really see the difference. And I always said that I wanted to sell ice cream or ice cream cones because I could sell to 100% of the population. That's not quite true, but with the eyeglass stuff, we do have 100% of the people need to have their eyes examined. Now, 50% wear glasses or contacts, but 100% of the people need to have their eyes examined. And that's, again, one of those examples where customer service really won out for us.
Yeah. From a leadership standpoint, Chuck, as the company grew over time, you grew from a handful of employees to thousands of employees. Culture, again, that's a word that's used a lot, but culture is important, can be important in a company. How did you manage that piece, going from a small little entrepreneurial company to a big company?
When I look back, hindsight, it I'm blown away myself that we were able to pull it off. But
Yeah.
I learned everything on the fly. I didn't go to college, but I also surrounded myself with great people, and that's what I'm so proud of today. I've been able to build a company with just great people. They're friends, but they're people that are always. I always tried to hire people better than me. I knew that was my strength, to hire people better than me. So, but in the early days, I did the accounting. I taught myself accounting. I taught myself how to do electronic repair. I taught myself. I never took a private music lesson, yet I played well enough to play professionally. And so I'm pretty good at digging in and doing stuff, but I'm also pretty good at knowing what my limits are and knowing how to hire people that are better than me.
Yeah, that's obviously part of your DNA, because I was gonna bring that up. I think you started playing the saxophone in 5th grade,
I did,
was
yes.
kinda your start in music, and that's another thing, a self-taught thing, so that's just part of who you are.
It is. In those days, it was a little bit hard. You didn't have the internet, but I would get
Yeah,
every book on jazz musicians. I listened to every record I could listen to. I didn't take any private lessons, but today it's so much easier. You can go on YouTube and figure a lot of stuff out, learn a lot of things.
yeah. As you think back, Chuck, on influences, in your life, obviously, I'm sure your parents, would certainly be at the top of the list. Were there other big influences on your life, business-wise or personally?
You're absolutely correct. My father, as I said, was a chemical engineer, but he was also an entrepreneur. He had lots of side jobs as I was growing up, and he had to be my biggest influence. And my grandfather, but I will tell you, I know it's not the proper thing to say. I didn't have a lot of other influences in the
Mhm.
business world. What I was doing was so different. I usually got scorned, like, when are you going to get a real job? That's what I always heard. When are you going to get a real
Yeah,
job? Because I wasn't working at International Harvester or General Electric or Lincoln Life or any of those companies.
yeah.
Now, obviously, as the years passed, and again, as the internet became available, I'm inspired by anybody doing anything with a level of excellence. And I don't care if it's, a garbage man or a restaurateur, or I don't care what the business is. If you're doing it really well, that inspires me.
Yeah. You mentioned some iconic companies from Fort Wayne's past, certainly International Harvester. I was actually working in Fort Wayne when unfortunately they closed, and I remember
Uh,
what a terrible thing that was. Lincoln, no one thought Lincoln would ever not be based in Fort Wayne, and obviously their headquarters left. And I think that's what's impressed me so much about Fort Wayne's success story, is despite those losses years ago, come back and had this success story. As you look going forward, what do you see as the great opportunities for Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana?
We're one of the fastest growing cities in the Midwest right now. We've had population growth over the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years. That's not true around the rest of the Midwest.
Right.
And that success breeds more success. And whether it's the ballpark 17 years ago, or what Mark Music did with the soccer stadium this year, or what we're going to do with the racetrack in the next couple of years, all that gives people confidence. And as we get confidence among ourselves, we can do some great things.
And I think that's a great way to put a wrap on our podcast, because I think you're absolutely right, Chuck. It's been a great a great time, a great opportunity to catch up with you and to hear your story, hear some new things you're doing. You're not slowing down at all. And that's another thing. And how important is that? One more question to you, Chuck, to give back to community, because so many entrepreneurs, they've been successful and they take their money and go on a beach somewhere and leave the state or leave town, whatever the case might be. You've chosen to stay, not only to stay, but to be an active part of the community. How important is that to you and your wife?
Well, it's incredibly important, and I have no interest in leaving. I'll go visit some places, but Fort Wayne's my home. I always want to come back, and I just love that we're in a position that we can invest in our community and invest in our people. And I think it's sad for the folks that have the ability that don't do it. They're really missing out on the pleasure of doing it. We've been incredibly blessed. I know we can't take it with us. I don't see U-Hauls at cemeteries very often. And so I hope I can leave with about a penny. I want to leave about a penny, and the rest of it I hope to have been given back to the community and just make things better.
Well, Chuck Surack, Indiana, Northeast Indiana, and the state of Indiana, very lucky to have you here doing great things for our state and certainly Northeast Indiana as well. Great to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Great to be here.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week has been Chuck Surack, the founder and chairman of Sweetwater, also the chairman and CEO of Sweetwater Enterprises. We are a weekly conversation with leaders, achievers, doers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to insights.com. I'm Gerry Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
From breaking news to in-depth articles, discover the advantage of unlimited access to all news from IBJ and Inside Indiana Business with our limited time trial. Get started now at ibj.com/trial offer.
Do you want to know what really drives change in Indiana? You won't find it in sound bites, you'll find it in stories. Stories from CEOs, lawyers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and community advocates. That's the IBJ Media Podcast Network. Insightful, local, impactful. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcast.com.